4, 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to Racing World, brought to you by Perspective Group. It's your motorsport podcast show in conjunction with Race Control Magazine.
Well, welcome to another edition of Racing World. There is a massive amount of stuff in the show for you today, but we're going to kick it off with the recent IMS test for Romain Grosjean and Jimmie Johnson. And I have to say, there is nothing better than the sound of an IndyCar out on the track at IMS, hearing that noise echo around that place. Just over a week ago, two of the biggest names of the IndyCar series from this year, Jimmie Johnson and Romain Grosjean, completed their rookie orientation tests at the IMS Oval, the famed IMS Oval. Johnson had raced at the IMS Oval some 18 times in his NASCAR between 2002 and 2019, but being aboard the IndyCar, well, that's just a whole different experience. And as for Grosjean, well, he's only ever seen the place, so another big step for him, but now dressed in that yellow DHL outfit, and it looks smart. The rookie orientation program is in controlled speeds and sections so that there's consistency across the laps. The first segment is just 10 laps long at a speed of 205 mile an hour to 210. The second segment is 15 laps between 210 mile an hour and 215. And then the final segment is 15 laps at an above or faster than 215. Both drivers completed those first two phases, and the third one was well into progress before rain halted play for the day. They surpassed everything that was required of them to complete rookie orientation. There were certainly smiles on both drivers after they'd completed the test, and they both had plenty to say.
What a great experience, and certainly as we got onto our second set of tires, things kind of became more normal for me out there around the track. The line is still a line, you know, if it's a Cup car or an Indy car. You know, each turn and the troublesome areas that I recall from my Cup car, those are also areas, and the car behaves in a similar fashion in the Indy cars. So I'm surprised now that I'm, you know, kind of up to speed and acclimated to the car and the track. It feels more familiar than probably any track I've been on so far.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's something special running at IMS. You know, it's such an incredible place that I didn't know of before I came to America. And last year I did my medical, early this year I did my medical test. And I came to the speedway and I thought, okay, all right, I get it. I told my wife, and then she came this summer and she was like, wow. So, you know, there's something about this place. I know the road course for sure, but oval I only knew it cycling. So doing it on a car was fun. The team helped me a lot, which is great. You know, I think on oval you do need someone to get you up to speed. The car felt pretty good. Obviously, we're nowhere near speed of qualifying, but it felt like everything went okay, and very quickly I could get to 205 and feeling pretty happy with it. And then going above 215 was also quite straightforward.
Well, joining me now, Bob McMurray. Bob, really good to see Jimmie Johnson and Romain Grosjean complete rookie orientation at Indy.
Yeah, seems a bit silly having Jimmie Johnson doing a rookie orientation, but I can understand why. It's the rules, it's the tradition, it's the Indy 500. I mean, a Formula One driver and a 7-time NASCAR champion being taught how to drive around an oval. There you go. It's tradition, eh? We both know what the Indy 500, Indianapolis Motor Speedway is like. It's all tradition. The race is almost incidental in the end, but it's good. Anyway, good to see them both going to do it.
Yeah, that's right. And you know, we'll certainly see them, we'll see them attempt to qualify next year for the 106th running. And of course, announced just today as well, officially, even though it's been so unofficial for so long, it's a bit like a Valtteri Bottas story. The fact that Jack Harvey is now joining Rahal Letterman's, and Sato has got a go at the moment, but we think that Huri does the Dale coin.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So do you think there'll be more cars next year? They're at capacity now, aren't they, as far as teams' capabilities are concerned?
Well, seeing as we'll just quickly debate it, the hot car count is that it could be 40 plus for Indy, and Honda and Chevy have both said that they can potentially cope with that. And the season's looking like 27, which is a problem for some pit lanes. If they were to go back to Toronto to the street race that we haven't had for 2 years, it can't cope with that. So that will be very, very interesting.
Yeah.
Now, moving on to a certain Grand Prix that happened over the weekend. What do you make of this one?
Well, it was, I've got notes. I wrote notes, and I God knows why. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. What have I got here? Interesting race, but not an exciting one. Never really wet, never really dry, just grey. one lane racing on a very grippy track. It wasn't interesting at all. I mean, well, it was interesting. It wasn't exciting in the least until, if you like looking at tactics and all that sort of thing towards the end, fine. But it was pretty blooming ordinary as a Grand Prix, I felt. In fact, some people called it boring. I don't know if there is.
Interesting twist, really. Interesting twist based on the Grand Prix that we had only a few weeks earlier, where Lando made the decision himself and overruled the team and stayed out on the tyre compound he was. This time round, we've got the team telling Lewis to pit, and he's the one that's sort of going, why are we doing this? But he did what the team said and then moaned about it later on.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned Bottas as well. I mean, it was good to see Bottas win. That's all there is to it. He drove superbly, did everything right over the weekend, followed team orders, when to come in, when to go out, all that sort of stuff. So he did that well.
Including qualifying where he flowed up for Lewis as well.
Well, yeah, there was that as well. So he's clearly the team leader over the weekend, I suppose, in many ways. Or he caused the team leader to get on well with stuff. Did Mercedes mess up Hamilton, or did Hamilton mess up himself? I'm of the opinion that Hamilton messed up himself by not taking the advice to come in earlier when Verstappen did and all those people. But I can understand both ways. There ain't no right or wrong in that until afterwards.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It would have been a masterstroke. But his intermediate tyres took a long time to warm up, and he never got back on cam. But if you looked at the other tyres and you listened to what Pirelli said, the chances are, if he'd have continued the way he was continuing driving on those tyres, they could have easily delaminated, blown up completely, and then it would have been a complete disaster. And yes, I know Ocon did the whole race on one set, but that was a different scenario. He wasn't racing as hard as Lewis was, basically. And when you saw his tyres at the end, man, they were close to canvas.
Well, you did notice during that stop of Lewis's that the centre section of the tyre had effectively lost the intermediate tread. It was only the outside edges that still retained it.
Yeah, and there were patches on there where the rubber had actually just started to wear through to the canvas, the construction itself. So that alone, that tells you got to stop. And was it a mess up by Mercedes? If you take the driver as part of the team and the team as part of the driver, it was a little bit of a stuff up, but there you go. It happens. Took a chance, didn't work.
And then Perez doing exactly the job that he's employed to do, backing it up, podium finish, big points for Red Bull overall. And that's kind of almost what they were lacking with Alex Albon last year. Yeah, but Alex didn't do a bad job last year generally. Yeah, he dropped off sometimes, but there's not many times this year when Perez has done the job he did, to be honest. I mean, he fought Lewis Hamilton like crazy, probably the best bit of the race with those two going 3 or 4 corners. But he did well, but maybe he should have done a little bit better, I think. But you can't do much better than being up on the podium, really, can you, I suppose, just behind your team leader. So that was all. There was, I think, a great drive from Carlos Sainz from effectively the back of the field.
I've got down here that I said it before, and I'll say it again. Ferrari have got the best driver pairing on the grid, in my opinion, and that car is coming towards the drivers, if there is such a thing, if that can happen. But they're learning to drive it better and better. The car is getting better and better. The engine clearly is getting, or the power unit and its associated units is getting better and better. So yeah, I mean that was a great drive by Sainz. I mean, at one stage, as they mentioned on TV, he was overtaking a car a lap almost coming through, which illustrates something else. I mean, I'll go straight on to what I was going to say then. McLaren is a conundrum at the moment. I mean, the team is a conundrum in that Norris is consistent, basically, to whatever the car can do. If the car is capable on that track, he drives it consistently. But Ricciardo is a conundrum in himself. I mean, he wins a race, or he does so well and qualifies well for a couple of races. And all of a sudden, he's nowhere. And he should be absolutely bloody embarrassed, the fact that he was overtaken by the 2 Alfa Romeos towards the end of the race when Norris is up the front. Now, look, Daniel Ricciardo, are we still looking at him beneficiently? Is that a word? I don't know if that's a word. Simply because he's Danny Rick and he's won Grand Prix and he's got the big smile, he's a happy-go-lucky guy. If you criticise him a little bit, take all that away, he's been quite abysmal at some races, and this was one of them. he has had plenty of time to get used to that car, but he's still not driving the car to its potential. Maybe his potential in the car, yes, but that's not the car's potential. Norris is driving the car to its potential. Sainz has taken time to get used to that McLaren in the first place. Sainz has taken time to get used to the Ferrari, but he's used to it, and they're doing it. I think Danny Rick really ought to be looking within himself to see just how he's handling things, managing things, or his engineer, or the team. But there's something that's definitely wrong there, I think, anyway.
You could almost say that about both the former, we'll call it, Red Bull drivers, because I'm putting Vettel in that bracket again as well. We're just not seeing what we should see out of Seb. I know it's the Aston Martin and all of that, but that Force India car, when it was a Force India car, was pretty darn good.
It's more of a Mercedes. It's more of a Mercedes than a Force India now. Vettel is still still got more points than Stroll in the car. Don't forget that. So he is still leading. I mean, his mistake on coming in for dry tyres, that was a gamble, and it was a gamble that perhaps would have been worth taking. I don't know. Only he knows that, but it didn't work out. So, I mean, he was all over the place, had to come in again, and that took him back into the teens as a result. So, yeah, I mean, what can you say about that? That was, it was a mistake. That's all. He is getting used to it, but that car it's a different car. They haven't really developed that car to what it was last year, to be honest. So I guess having him there, hopefully he'll develop the Aston Martin into a decent car for next year, hopefully.
Is this a case too of perhaps people sitting on the fence now and putting development into 2022, because we know with the rule change, it's kind of like, okay, season's done. We know it's going to be either Red Bull or Mercedes effectively that win the constructors and drivers titles, and we'll wait for next year and roll the dice then.
I think you're absolutely right. I think there's one or two teams that are still developing little bits and pieces, but when you think of it, there's such a big development to come for next year. You want all your brains, all the men with the biggest ologies in your team to actually be working on a car for next year rather than trying to develop this one, the car this year. Obviously, Mercedes and Red Bull are in there developing a little bit. Ferrari has developed some. McLaren is consistently developing little bits and pieces. They're the ones at the top of the tree who have got to keep the championship in mind, because they're racing for millions of dollars, don't forget. Those four teams between them. And it's really quite close to the top of the championship at the moment now. I mean, it's, what are they? It's bugger all between the top two teams. It's only, I don't know, 6 or something points. Then McLaren on 240 and Ferrari behind them on 232. So those four teams really have got to keep the edge coming into it. So the other teams, they'll be developing like crazy, I would think. What else have I got here? All sorts of things. God, I can't even read my own scribble half the time. I've got a bit of a rant. You know, I do a rant now and again. This is not a rant. I just get a little bit annoyed about.
We had one for a while. We're due one.
Get a bit annoyed about penalties in the sport. Not necessarily the penalties for driving. I can understand that, but every time there is a penalty, you hear the next word that comes out of everybody's mouth is, consistently. That's an inconsistent penalty. There is nothing consistent about racing. Even if it looks the same sort of incident, the car is either going faster or slower, or it's a meter to the left or a meter to the right, or this driver did something different. The very incidents are inconsistent. They can't be consistent. Otherwise, it would be just like the penalties given for jumping the start, because there's an electronic wire that'll tell you, or going over the white line for track limits, because there it is. It's clear as mud. But you know, I have some sympathy, which is strange for me to say, with the stewards and those people giving out the penalties, because the penalties are clearly defined when they assess that there is something wrong in the book of FIA. Clearly defined. You know, if you do this, you get this. That's about all there is to it. But these guys are never, ever going to have exactly the same incident causing a penalty, because all the dynamics of it are all different. So, you know, I just get fed up with everybody saying, it's inconsistent. This is inconsistent. Okay, you try. You know, you try. It's easy. Once again, we'll go back to the old keyboard in front of you. Easy to criticize. But you
Yeah.
try and give the penalties out, and it's not that easy. Anyway, that's a bit of a rant.
Okay, well, I've got a twister one for you this week.
Yeah.
So the Michael Andretti rumour about him purchasing a Formula One team doesn't go away. In fact, there are going to be talks in Austin at the next Grand Prix, which we know of.
Yeah.
We immediately jumped to the cause thinking that maybe he was looking at Haas, but we did know that there was potential Williams and, of course, Sauber, aka Alfa Romeo.
Yeah.
Those talks have gone further now to the extent that he's meeting them, and it has the 250 million that he needs, evidently, according to Racer magazine. So my question to you would be, if you were Valtteri Bottas and you signed for the Alfa Romeo team as the team leader, based under the fact that it was that current management structure, how do you feel if it suddenly becomes Andretti Autosport Alfa Romeo in 2022?
I'd feel all right. I'd feel actually probably better, because suddenly I'm looking at the fact that whoever the other driver is, don't forget they haven't decided on a driver yet. I can't see Andretti drafting in an American like Colton Herta or Rossi or anything like that. Can't see that happening. So they'll stick with, for this coming season anyway, they'll stick with the whatever is coming in, whatever they've agreed with, which they're going to announce within a week or 2 weeks apparently, which may be, which makes me think is something to do with America. I don't know. It's all very complicated. But by the same fact, if I'm Valtteri Bottas sitting there, I'll think, okay, there's a lot of money coming into the team, therefore there is money in the team. Michael Andretti has got strong links with American manufacturers. What do they run in America? Andretti's? They run Hondas.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. A Honda's Formula One team as well at the moment. So they may have access to Red Bull engines when which will be Red Bull engines when Honda pull out, which is the hot rumor that they may not have Ferrari engines in Sauber for much longer. So there's an engine avenue there. And plus the fact, if I don't get on here too well, there's a bloody good career in IndyCar racing that I might get myself in an IndyCar and try that, because there's a few other Swedes, Northern Europeans, English, all sorts of things, French, gone over there and made quite a name for themselves in IndyCar racing. So if I was Valtteri Bottas, I'd think, fine, it's nothing to do with me at the moment, but I can see various tendrils here that may improve my career, because I'm not going to be a Formula One driver forever. So who knows? Yeah. So yeah, that's my answer. He shouldn't be worried.
No, it's as we've mentioned before, it's a lot of moolah for Michael to come up with, but clearly it's there. So he's got some backers somewhere. You know, does it dilute from the IndyCar team and everything else they do, the Extreme team, the Formula E team? I think it's just it's an extension of what, you know, Michael wants for Andretti Autosport.
Yeah, sure. I would be surprised that $250 million buys him the team, to be honest.
Yeah,
I would have thought more than that.
Yeah,
I would have thought either he's paying a cheap price or there's other money coming in that's going to bump that price up a little bit, or it'll be a co-ownership with who owns it, the Swedish guy at the moment. I can't remember his name. I can't see that just $250 million is going to do it. I mean, the reason he's buying into a team is, one, because it's for sale. Secondly, because if you come in, you've got to put a $300 million bond up for other teams to get prize money. But I just, it doesn't sit with me easily that that he would have a team that's based in Switzerland. That's all. No. I would have thought he'd want to consolidate things in the UK more than anything. There's an awful lot. If he buys into the Sauber team, ex-Sauber team, or whatever it's called now, it's owned by a company, then I would imagine there's a huge number of details that are going to come out in the next 6 months to a year, if not immediately, about it. That's all.
Just slightly staying with the IndyCar thing just for a sec, too, it was confirmed by Penske that they will only run 3 cars next year, with Pagenaud moving on to Shanks. So yeah, we're down to 3 at Penske. So that, you know, kind of was an interesting twist as well, but that's what it will be. So, you know, by the by. Other things that happened over the weekend, I guess we have to talk about it. If you're not a New Zealander and you're watching the show, I know we've got a lot of fans in particularly the west coast of California and stuff now. German Touring Car Championship, and the Kiwi driver Liam Lawson taken out at turn 1 effectively, and actually taking out his teammate, also another New Zealander, Nick Cassidy, effectively. What do we take on that, Bob? I kind of think it's welcome to the world of German touring cars.
Yeah, well, he was taken out twice in exactly the same fashion, incidentally. I mean, race 1, I watched both races here. And he was taken out both times by the same driver, effectively, on the same corner at the start, Kevin van der Linde, South African driver, who's also pretty much a rookie in that series. I think the rules of DTM, which is now GT3, are almost a violation of the FIA rules of engagement. I really do. They permit too much going on in what is a manufacturer-based, and always has been a manufacturer-based series. If you, what happened at the weekend did the DTM, the German Touring Car Championship, the Deutsche Tourenwagenmeisterschaft, did that championship no good at all. First of all, there was, and I'm not saying this because of Liam, but there was a championship leader taken out by the championship contender twice in the same corner, in the same fashion, effectively, from the lead of the race, and then from the race itself in the second thing, and he only got a 5-second penalty for re-entering the track in the wrong way in the second half. So they're encouraging bashing and bumping. It's GT3 now, it's not saloon cars, it's not the old, Mercedes. It's a totally manufacturer-controlled environment, always has been in German touring car, well, recent history anyway. The GT3 cars are not as good to look at as the old German touring car. They're just GT3 cars, that's all there is to it.
Yeah.
The final event, that event there with the rules around it and everything, was an absolute mockery for racing. Not only was the championship contender taken out with no penalty basically for the other driver, but then the whole thing was manufactured such that the next driver that could win the championship in a Mercedes was behind 2 other Mercedes back in the pack. He was 8th or something like that, and was allowed by Mercedes come all the way through, such that Lucas Auer, who incidentally is Gerhard Berger's nephew, and was out in New Zealand for the Toyota Racing Series, and Gerhard Berger runs the DTM, nothing to do with it, I suppose. Then Mercedes organised that so a Mercedes driver could win the championship, who originally had no chance of winning the championship apart from mathematically. I think it's, and then some of the things that Mercedes said in justification of the place swapping to enable their driver to win the championship, nothing short of laughable. Absolute, and I'm not going to go through them. Somebody want to read all about it. Nothing short of laughable. That series at the moment, the way it's run, is a complete farce and should not be allowed to be called a racing series. It's a demonstration series for German manufacturers, where the only 2 cars in there that weren't German, the 2 Ferraris, and they were basically run. They were run. Yeah. I do feel sorry for Liam Lawson. I do. And in many ways, you live by the sword, die by your sword. He's been bashing around during the year as well. Nothing like what happened. But, after all, maybe he should have closed down the inside of the track more than he did on the set. I don't know. I'm not criticizing his driving or anything. It's just the way the series is run, and especially Kevin van der Linde, to do that and get away with it. Absolute farce.
Well, at the end of the day, it did mean that an Italian branded car didn't win the German Touring Car Championship. That's all we need to say, really, isn't it?
Well, yeah, there you go. Yeah.
That's all we need to say. So speaking of something maybe a bit more positive, and I think it's got you quite excited right now, we're into the playoff phase of NASCAR. It's looking pretty good, isn't it?
It is. The last one on the Charlotte Roval was pretty exciting. There was some bashing, talking about bashing, but they encouraged that. That's part of the whole series. Kevin Harvick took himself out of it after getting into a bit of a mess with Chase Elliott and other people. So anyway, we're down to the final 8 drivers now. That's Kyle Larson, Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex Jr., Ryan Blaney, Kyle Busch, Chase Elliott, Joey Logano, and Brad Keselowski. 1, 2, 3 Penske cars in the final 8, which is, Roger must be happy about that. So now they've got 3 more races. That's at Texas, Kansas, and Martinsville. And then they go to the final, which is then the final 4 out of those 8 at the Phoenix for the final, which is a Phoenix Oval is
fantastic.
I've been there and driven around it. It's a small place.
Yeah.
I tell you, it's a very small place in the middle of the desert. So having 40 odd cars there, of which 4 are championship contenders, that's going to be a pretty mean race. Now, I can't watch a whole NASCAR race. Honestly, I have to use the old fast forward button now and again because it, goes on a bit. But nonetheless, it's pretty exciting when you can stop it, go back and see the exciting bits. So,
well, you've got to remember with some of these things too, is that there is the entertainment aspect of it, and NASCAR certainly is delivering on that. It's taken a while to get back there, but I think they're starting to get the recipe right again. It's not taken away from IndyCar. It delivered again, 17th championship in a row that's gone to the wire. Formula One will deliver again because they create the hype that goes around it, which in this case will be Lewis versus Max. So there's variations of the theme, but NASCAR's up there at the moment, and it's good to see.
It is. It's getting back a little bit. They have taken a dip, and they need new young drivers in it, and the likes of Chase Elliott and people like that are the young drivers that are coming into it. And the biff bosh bash of NASCAR is always appreciated by the fans. I mean, they've got, they cheer and whistle and shout and holler for various drivers, and that's a good thing. That's involvement. I've not seen a full stadium where they've been. No. Even Bristol is full these days, and they're trying to do that old dirt racing thing at Bristol Motor Speedway as well. So that'll be interesting to see if, they are doing it again, how that works. But NASCAR series is something that is peculiar to America. They've tried it in England, they've tried it in Australia, they've tried it all over the place, but it doesn't work. It's an American series, and that's all there is to it. But I think it's one of the going to be the unusual weekends of the year coming up soon, where there are no NASCAR races, because they seem to race every weekend, 52 weekends of the year, and their off season is very small compared to others. So, as you say, lots of other championships are going to be exciting. The Formula One Championship is going to be more and more, by the looks of it, with deals signed lately, more and more a Middle Eastern Championship as we go on, racing in Qatar and Saudi Arabia and all sorts of other places there, which are doing long-term deals. But a little bit of good news this week. It looks like Imola is coming back on the calendar as a more permanent fixture. Imola is a wonderful track. Despite all the history of Imola, it's a wonderful track for Formula One cars to be on. Very narrow and very demanding, and they enjoyed it this year, so we'll see what goes like next year.
Yeah, no, I think it's good. And then on the local front, obviously, depending on what happens with our COVID alert levels and all that sort of carry on will determine a lot of what happens with the domestic motorsport season. And I've been spending quite a bit of time recently with the promoter from Western Springs Speedway, and the same thing, we're about to get, a Speedway season underway. It should have effectively been starting the first weekend in November, probably on hold now until December, but there are some strategic plans as to how that will happen. Very tough job for a promoter, whether it be Formula One or domestic Speedway in New Zealand. It's hard, isn't it? It's very hard. Yeah,
well, especially in New Zealand, because there's nowhere else to go apart from New Zealand. You can, with the Speedworks Championship, national championships going on, with Jeff Short, the promoter, and the series category manager for the Toyota 86 Championship. That is supposed to kick off the 86 Championship in November. It's got to be looking a bit tenuous because I think it's only a month away now before the first race at Hampton Downs. There's drivers being announced for it all the time. Matthew McCutcheon was the latest one today as we talk. So I do hope it gets going. I really do. Apart from the fact that we need motor racing back on cam again in the North Island. I know the South Island's been doing very well, trying to do very well with racing, but North Island, we've been, sadly deprived of 2 good years, effectively, with the Toyota Racing Series.
Yes.
And we're not going to have it this year at all, obviously, apart from the Grand Prix. But the 86 Series is starting to look pretty good, and it's going to be, I think, the premier tin top series in New Zealand, with all the young drivers coming through, with some, shall we say, not so young drivers in there as well. So it'll be exciting. whenever we get going. I can't wait for it.
Just before we wrap up this week's show, you've just reminded me of a couple of things. Hunter McElroy almost certainly looking at that Indy Lights drive for next year. We have that officially in a few weeks, and we'll be able to announce the team. It's a good team. It is a very good team. And then Billy Fraser moving up from
Billy Fraser
to Pro Indy. That is a big move, Bob. It's not something that you should underestimate. The field in USF is generally about 28 cars. And then, to go up to Indy Pro, it's probably 14 to 16 cars. And the difference when I've spoken with Hunter about that transition, because he's done it, it is more than you think it's going to be. So that's a big move for Billy Fraser, and I certainly wish him all the very best for that. He's got a year under his belt now, but next year, if he does move, that's a big move.
Yeah, and looking at his press release this morning, and from what he's saying and his quotes in it, he's pretty well and excited to be there, and he has every right to be, because Billy is a quick driver, and I think this year has just been a transitional year, getting used to the American scene as much as anything else. Which, I remember the very first time I went to America. It's an eyes wide open thing, and I think it would have been the same for him and the same for anybody who goes to the US for the first time, especially when you're in amongst it and driving. I think his eyes are really wide open now, and he likes it. So hopefully Billy we can be here doing this next year at the same time saying Billy done good, because I hope so.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, he's based in Indianapolis now. As you well know, that's not a bad place to reside. He's staying there over the Christmas period. He's not coming home.
Bloody cold in winter. I don't know about a good place
he's probably a bit of a surprise on that one, that's for sure. And then the only other thing, just before we go, of course, it looks like maybe not next year, but certainly the following year, maybe next year, something that you would have experienced, Detroit returning to the original Detroit Grand Prix circuit as opposed to Belle Isle for IndyCar. I actually think that might be quite cool.
Yeah, so do I. I remember the first time we went there, we had the garage was in the Ren Center, the Renaissance Center, and the crowd were allowed to walk around. We were all inside, and within 2 days, two words became very popular. One, Detroit became DeToilet, because it was in just a disgusting part of Detroit. So it was DeToilet, and there was a bar there called Hooligans, and that quickly became known as Hooligans. Just down the road. And Hooligans is still a bar in America.
Yes.
A chain of bars. But it became Hooligans, and it was very popular with the Formula One fraternity, shall I say, with Long Island teas. I'll tell you those stories later. It would be good. I think on Belle Isle, it was a great place to race. But I don't know, it would be good to see them back on the streets. I don't like street racing particularly, with the concrete walls and very narrow. But it would be good to see them on the old track of Detroit, if indeed it is similar to the old track of Detroit.
Yeah, no, it's certainly on the books, and they've done a great job at Belle Isle. A Penske promoted venue, that one, and done a lot for the restoration of Belle Isle. That was part of what IndyCar did by going there. And I think it'd be quite good to see it back on there. But anyway, that's that. That kind of just covers us off for the week. Then we go to the US for the next Formula One Grand Prix. Supercar, it's coming soon. At Eastern Creek.
And the good thing about whenever Supercar does come, I don't know, there's all sorts of things going on about that again, isn't there? Yes, the one good thing about, there's more than one thing, the good thing about Formula One going to COTA, Circuit of the Americas, is that it's on TV in New Zealand about 8 o'clock in the morning instead of 2 o'clock in the morning. So, it's early morning stuff instead of late night stuff for a while.
Maybe we'll do the podcast live and you can be watching it at the same time and do a play-by-play for us.
Oh, yeah, that'll take a while. I'll get it. If you haven't seen rants until you've seen me watching Formula One.
Well, until next week, Bob, once again, I thank you very much. And to everyone who's been watching today, we both thank you for taking the time out of your day to either watch or listen to the show. We really enjoyed it.
Tell me I'm talking crap. Go on. Everybody tell me I'm talking crap.
He's not talking crap. We do enjoy bringing the show. Don't forget, if you don't like or share or subscribe to us now, well, you should. And we'll be in tune with more rants from both of us, probably, if you don't. But we do appreciate your time, and thanks so much for watching another edition of Racing World.
Thank you.